want to talk about the intellectual dishonesty of gun control advocates, and particularly gun control advocates that make a point of mentioning that they believe in the Second Amendment. And what I want to discuss, and the reason I want to discuss it, I think, is just thoughts I want to share with everyone. Why you need to be careful about ceding any of your Second Amendment rights. There are different types of gun control advocates. There are gun control advocates who will come out outright and tell you, I just don't believe in guns. I don't think they should have ever been invented. I wish it could be undone. No one should have any. And I can appreciate that person, right? I like that person even because I know where they're at. I know what they're dealing. I know what I'm dealing with. I know what their position is, and they're honest about it. Don't agree with it. Not going to give up my guns just because they don't like them. But at least I know what they're about, right? But then you have the gun control advocate who even as he's trying to impose or advocate for restrictions on your rights to own arms, explains how he does in fact believe in the he or she does in fact believe in the Second Amendment, but that he thinks there should be reasonable restrictions. They'll couch it, qualify however you want, reasonable restrictions, whatever you want to call it. Here and here's the problem, and here's why it's intellectually dishonest. It's always couched in terms of gun violence, obviously. And frankly, one of the issues that we all need to be aware of, or at least just flag it when they get started on that gun violence bit, don't qualify the type of violence, right? Violence is violence. So if you get beat to death by somebody with their bare hands, you're dead. If you get beat to death by somebody with a baseball bat, you're dead. If you get stabbed to death, you're dead. You get shot, you're dead, right? Assuming the bullet kills you. You're no less dead because you got stabbed. I'm sure for the victim it doesn't make any difference. It might even be better to get shot, a clean gunshot if you had to go, right? But you get the point that I'm making. Don't let them qualify this gun violence because it's a false argument. You see what's going on in Britain. They're stabbing each other left and right, killing each other with knives, and now they're talking about some article I read. I don't know if it's true, but some article about banning kitchen knives or taking the points off of the kitchen knives now. To the point, it's just ridiculous, right? So it's not gun violence, it's violence. It's the people that want to engage in violence, and they're going to do it because they're violent criminals, and they're going to do it whether they get a gun, whether they get a bat, whether they burn your house down with gasoline while you sleep. If they want to murder you, they're going to murder you. Murderers are going to be murderers, and they're certainly not going to not get guns because the law says you can't have them, right? The only people you're legislating out of gun ownership are law-abiding citizens by definition, who will adhere to whatever laws are passed. Criminals are criminals. I'm not going to be a murderer, but then refuse to or decide not to be a murderer. I'm not going to be morally willing to commit murder, but then be unwilling to violate the law and get a gun in order to commit the murder with, right? I'm willing to violate the law and commit murder, but I'm not willing to violate the law and get a gun illegally so that I can commit murder. That's just, it doesn't get any more stupid. But so we come back to the point I'm making. Why is it intellectual dishonesty? And here's why. When you qualify, when they qualify the violence all the time as gun violence, right? And if you do that, then the argument becomes not can we get rid of violence now, which is really, that would be the issue, right? If you want to discuss it, that's what's germane. Can we stop murders, not gun murders? Can we stop violence, not gun violence? But they qualify, can you get rid of gun violence? Well, there is a way to get rid of gun violence, and there's one way, and it's very easy to figure out, and it's to get rid of guns, right? Not some guns, but all guns. Not AR-15s, not AK-47s, not handguns, not shotguns, not hunting rifles, all guns. That would be the way to get rid of gun violence, and it would be an effective way to do it, right? You get rid of all guns. That means you don't manufacture any more guns, you don't sell any more guns, you don't put any more guns into the stream of commerce, and you confiscate the guns that people own. That would be the only way to effectively get rid of gun violence. Because if you manufacture guns, if people own guns and they're allowed to keep them, if guns are in the public, criminals are going to get them. That's it. They're going to get them. So it is completely intellectually dishonest to say that I believe in the Second Amendment, but I want to get rid of gun violence. I believe in your right to own weapons, and I want you to be allowed to own weapons, but I want to get rid of gun violence. The simple truth is, if you want to get rid of gun violence, if you say that to me, I know that you want all of the guns. And it's really that simple, right? And you're not going to tell me that, because that's the intellectually dishonest person. and it's generally the politicians, right? So they're not going to come out and say it. Politicians are not going to say it, right? Because it wouldn't fly. You can't say that. But you can say, oh, I just want to put these restrictions on. And then you try to keep rolling back those restrictions over and over and over again. And you all, I'm sure many of you have heard it. We call it, in the law, we call it the slippery slope. You know, you start off taking a little bit and it gets out of control. And the next thing you know, you can't stop. Rights are gone, gone, gone. But that's the intellectual dishonesty that's involved in it. The idea that if you want to get rid of gun violence, once you say that to me, that's all I need to hear. Because the only way, I know that there's only way, one way you can do it. That's all I need to hear. Because I know there's only one way you can do it, and that's to get rid of all the guns. So then the next question would be, the people who are being intellectually dishonest, are they intellectually capable of recognizing their intellectual dishonesty, right? And I think that in some cases you have maybe, you know, your average person you might talk to on the street who are against guns. I do believe there are people out here who believe what they're saying. You know, when they say, hey, you know, I don't think there should be any AR-15s on the street. I don't think there should be any AK-47s. But I do believe in the Second Amendment. There are some people out here who say that and believe it. It's still no more true than it would be for the person who knows they're lying. But, you know, there are some people who convince themselves that they're being honest, right? But not politicians. And that's what's scary, and that's why you don't give. There will be some restrictions you can come up with, and I would probably say to myself, hey, that would be reasonable. But you know why I won't go along with these things? Because I know that the people I'm dealing with, the people I'm dealing with are not honest brokers. They're not good people, right? They're not honest dealing. It's not honest dealing. So there might be some things that I would go along with in terms of restrictions. But if I thought I was dealing with someone who was honest and true, that might say, hey, that's reasonable. I might, maybe I can accept that, right? But I know better. I know what their real intentions are. And that goes, again, back to the intellectual dishonesty. I know what they're about. I know what they really want. And that's why you can't deal with them at all. That's why we find ourselves in this point where you just find yourself, no matter what they say, you just find yourself, if you're smart, you know that you can't believe them. You know they have one objective, no matter what they tell you, and that's to get every gun that's out there off the streets and out of the hands of people. They do not believe in the Second Amendment. Don't want you to have a gun, any type. If you're a hunter, don't believe for 1 minute that you're safe, that your hunting rifle is safe. They'll have your ass out there with a slingshot and a bow and arrow. You know, some people like archery hunting, and that's great, and that's what you're gonna do for the rest of your life. And that's, I'm sure that maybe they'll let you keep your bow and arrow. But I'm telling you, they'll take your shotgun, take your rifle. I just don't believe that those politicians that are out there pushing for gun control want you to have any gun, no matter what they say. So be careful about any right that you're willing to cede. I think it's ill-advised. I don't think you're dealing with people that are telling you the truth. And once you, I don't know, in the history of this country, we become increasingly less free generation by generation, and at least to some extent and in some ways. And it generally doesn't go backwards, you know. Once you give up some right or some portion of a right, generally speaking, in my experience or my reading of history, you don't tend to ever get it back, you know. It doesn't flow the other way. You don't become more free over time. Government tends to get bigger, not smaller. Regulations tend to proliferate. They don't tend to be written away. I mean, there tends to be more. You have more regulation on top of, So be careful what you give up, because once it's gone, and it's a bridge to the next right that they want to strip from you. You know, that's what it is. Slippery slope. Do it piece by piece by piece, incrementally, until you ultimately get what you want. And you build your way up there, so when it ultimately comes time to get what you want, it doesn't seem like such a big leap, because you didn't go from A to B. You know, you didn't go from 1 to 2. You went from 1 to 1.1 to 1.2 to all the way up to 1.9, and then you went from 1.9 to 2. And it didn't seem like such a big jump, you know. 2 being where you don't want to be, 1 being where you started at, where you wanted to be. You know, when you went from 1 to 1.1, you didn't fight too bad. And then you stay at 1.1 long enough for it to get known when they take you to 1.2. Well, it didn't seem so bad. It was just 0.1 step. You know, you get used to that, you go to 1.3, right? And do it incrementally, that you get used to the new rights that you have that are less than the ones that you had. They let you settle in and get used to them. And then once you take those for granted, they'll carve away a little bit more. And next thing you know, you're at 2. And if anybody had ever told you at 1, I'm taking you straight to 2, you would have refused to do it. So they don't do it that way. They do it in pieces. watch yourself. Keep shooting. Enjoy it. I certainly do, but I want the right to keep on enjoying it. This is just something I wanted to put out there. So peace with you.